Islam, peace and hotep. Greetings. We're here. Islam to all the Moors online. We welcome you to Canaanland Moors. You know the Tuesday session. Um, also too, don't forget 9:30 tonight. Moorish Heritage and History School, Blog Talk Radio, right? Um, Today's class on the 27th of May is Be a Solutionary, Not a Revolutionary. And I was inspired by this DVD right here. So make sure you go to Sabir Bey. Just Google him. He'll come up. And go get the DVD when Brother Tashreef Bey went to Cali. So just put that out there, right? It takes finance to uplift a nation. And you already know that we don't go in people's pockets, right? You already know that if you give finance to active Moors are taking it and they're doing with it something to help uplift the nation, right? So it belongs to all the Moors out there from all over the world who continually support Canaanland. I want to say Islam to y'all, and Islam again to all the active Moors, the Moors who study, right? And that's the foundation of activity. The foundation of active Moors is that they study. You ask them something, and they'll put you on. They'll give you no fees, right? As we brought up that DVD, I want to say Islam to the Moors and Khalifa that are doing the monumentous works of uplifting fallen humanity out there, right? We just started a joint venture with Khalifa Media, so it's official that we're Khalifa Media for Canaanland. So be on the lookout, because you know the Moors in Canaanland, they study, right? So you know we're gonna have some books and some DVDs and some documentaries and stuff coming out, because Moors are starting to realize that this is their birthright. It's not some club, bandwagon, jump on, right? This is your life. If you want it, live it. If you don't, then, whatever, right? And something but Allah is going to take its course. So Islam to all you Moors, keep active. This is one newspaper or something. Last Thursday, May 22nd. This is, Canaanland Moors, little free paper that you could just go get anywhere, right? They just give them away, right? Now, look how serious this is, right? We got paper, right? Moors out there has got papers, books, whatever like that. We can't sell this stuff. And they're bombarding the people, the Avalanche of Lies, just like Noble Ali talked about, every day, all day, 24/7, right? So make sure that you go support Grand Chief Nature in Asbury Park, because those Moors over there, they got a paper. So support them, support Moors in Khalifa. Once again, it's just once you study, you're going to be active with this, right? Brother Rami Salam Il, he got his newsletter, so make sure you contact those Moors and realize that what we put out there is having an impact, right? Now this is just some, this is an article about a bus driver, right, who time to get off the clock and hit park, put on the hazards, Jumped off the bus, went about his business, and left the bus for 20 minutes, right? So everybody's mad. People are butty, right? So they interview Victor Bolario. They interview Victor Bolario. Right? You can just go online and just punch it up, you know. Riders fume after bus driver dashes, right? So we'll just go to the end of the article and recognize that, yeah, it's an avalanche of lies, but, you know, Noble Drawley also said that read the newspaper because you're going to make the European tell the truth, right? So this guy's clearly European, okay? We're just going to show you the prophecy, right? It's a European guy, right? We clearly see that, okay? We're just going to show you the prophecy, right? Noble Drawley's prophecy manifested, right? He said that the European's going to tell the truth. Noble Drawley said that. Ain't nobody else, no other leader, no other, you know what I mean, come in the community, sell something, no other religious, whatever. Nobody. Nobody. Go do your research and you find me somebody, right, who told Asiatics that read the newspapers because the European's going to tell the truth to you, right? And remember, this is 2014, right? The European's going to tell the truth. And then also, too, remember, just like Brother Seth and Rabbe said, right, you know, anytime you're reading something, make sure you have on your thinking cap. Anytime you're reading something, make sure you have on your thinking cap. Yeah, you can be physical with it, but, you know, for people who don't have fezzes, so they don't feel left out or whatever, it's not really about the fez. It's about dealing with logic, common sense, right? It's not as advanced as they're trying to make it seem, right? So this is what this European said. Valerio uploaded his video to YouTube depicting the empty driver's seat on bus number 1667. Why do you have your camera? The driver who called the supervisor is seen asking Bolario. Don't ask me. The bus was beeping and flashing. It's four ways with the engine running and the front door open. Right? This is Bolario now. I'm still shocked he didn't say anything. Communicate at least, Bolario said of his driver. It's not like you're herding cattle around the city. It's ridiculous. Right? Right? So we put on the thinking cap now, right? That is the European now. So remember, so because this is a European making this statement about people being cattle, right? Which Moors are going to say chattel, just because, you know, we're on the higher level, right? The people are being herded around like cattle around the city. Okay? This is a European talking. So if this European is identifying, right, that the people are cattle, because whether he, you know, wants to play, it's not like he's an human and whatever. Point is, he is driving around cattle. He is driving around shadow property. Because all those people are citizens of the corporate slave state called Canada, right? They have passport, license, birth certificate, etc., right? And then people are going to join, well, Kudro, you have a passport. Yeah, but I reserve my rights on mine, and I have my fez on mine. So I learn how to live within contracts because I study. So I don't care. I'll get any stuff that they have to give. Because I know that I don't have any obligation, I know that we're under occupation, I know that this is a debt currency system that's running right now, so there's nothing called money or wages or whatever like that, right? Justin Timberlake came out and told y'all that it's all about time, right? That's what it's about, right? Ain't about nothing else. So this European that shadow property on the 32 Eglinton West bus, right? And oh yeah, this is the main intersection by the temple, just so you know. So if you're not from Toronto, right, you can go talk to Seth and Rob Bay. We just drove there last week from Scarborough, which is in the east end of the city, to the temple, which is in the west end of the city, right? And we had to go down a street south called Keel, right, and make a right on Eglinton to go east, to go to the temple, which is a 3-minute walk from that intersection. So this is the intersection where this interview happened at. And this guy's talking about shadow, right? So Noble Drew Ali's prophecy manifested, just so you can see for yourself, right? So you can see for yourself. Noble Drew Ali said, read the newspapers and listen to the radio. I'm going to make the European tell the truth, right? And there it is, CB24. European telling the truth that the people are shadow property. That's why bus drivers didn't have to communicate with them and tell them anything about, oh yeah, I'm just leaving, I'll be right back, next driver's coming, or sit and wait, because they're stateless, right? They belong to the modern day slave ship called Canada, okay? So we recognize, just with the European making that statement, we recognize as Moors that the European's the new nigger. So what happened to the nigger? What happened to the foundation of the shadow property, which is Negro black colored people? If the European is saying that he's being run around like shadow, because that wasn't his position all the time on this side. They were plenipotentiaries to the Moors, right? They had political relations with us, right? So they got a little bit of birthright to use to do whatever, you know. Not some of them got greedy. That's their business, right? So when we see that the Europeans are recognizing something, right? Europeans are recognizing something. Hold on a second. What do you mean there's no money and James Trafficant and Karen Hudis and all these people coming out, whistleblowers and all this? It's only Europeans coming out, except Sherry Jackson. But her name is Jackson, so she's kind of a European, right? So it's only Europeans coming out with the same information that Moore's been talking about since Noble Drew Ali. Same information. Okay. So for our people, since they're not the nigger anymore, right? We have an obligation as Moors to go get those people. What they do with this is up to them. But we have to say at least that I went and I told that person about their nationality and their birthright. Right? Because, like we tell people all the time, this isn't about some positions or whatever like that. We're 100 years behind. And people still don't know about this. And that's the issue. So people who know about this need to be like Khalifa Media or something. And start putting out websites and whatever, and doing Skypes and connecting with people all over the world, right? Just for the simple fact that it has to be done. So the word has to get out to the people about this magnificent thing that everybody, will put it on the record again. Everybody's complaining about taxes in Toronto. The Moors are using their nationality card, right? And they're getting tax exempt, right? At Scarborough Town Center. Everybody knows what Scarborough Town Center is. Everybody knows this place. Everybody knows where this hallmark is in that mall, right? but they don't want to get down with the movement because they heard something, or they seen something, or this guy said, or whatever like that. When there's goddamn proof right here that you can get taxes off, what are you complaining about taxes for when you don't have to pay taxes? Majority of people who look at me, you think I'm a black guy. And they're always in the store when I put down the tax exempt. Right? They're always in the store. And as soon as you go tell them about something, or religion, I don't want to convert to any religion, I'm Christian. But what are we talking about Christian and religion? We're talking about taxes right now. You can show this card right here and get taxes off just like I did. Well, right? Devolutionary. So we have to get them out of that devolutionary position, right, into being solutionaries and solving their problems. Because everything was laid out for us. It's just for us to exercise, right? So, revolution, a complete overthrow of the established government in any country or state by those who were previously subject to it. Okay? A complete overthrow of the established government. So as soon as we get right there, and you hear people talking about revolution and the fists up and all that, and let's take out the whatever, those people are running a fraud. Why? Because that's not a government. That's a private European corporation that came over here, and they're posing as a government. So if you have a revolution, or you claim that you have a revolution, or that there's gonna be one, and it's not gonna be televised and all that, because it's gonna be so dread that as soon as black people realize and they start whatever, y'all are crazy people. That's your mentality. And the solution to counter the revolution is nationality. Because this is our government. The complete overthrow of an established government. Right? The complete overthrow. So like Ukraine, that's complete overthrow. There's not no complete overthrow over here. Because there's Moors that are going to these so-called private, foreign, inquisitionist jurisdictions that they call courts, and they're beating cases and going home. So there's no overthrow here. You can't tell me there's an overthrow when the Moors are still able to go into their jurisdiction and beat them up with law. You can't tell me that there's an overthrow and that the white man is in control, or the European, or whoever they think the overthrower is, right? When Moors could send a writ to IRS, tax people, school board, whatever, for whatever reason, and those people back down and do what that individual who has a nationality ordered them to do. Because we're the heirs. We're the beneficiaries of the vast estate. And the vast estate is the Moroccan Empire. The vast estate is the Moroccan Empire. And yeah, you can get it through a temple, but you don't have to. But that doesn't mean don't go to the temple just because, Pedro said you don't have to go to the temple, you can just do whatever. No, still go to the temple and get what you're supposed to get from the temple, because Juali set that up for you to go there and get what you're supposed to get. And if it's not there, leave that one, go to the next one. And if it's not there, leave that one, go to the next one. Right? Revolutionary, pertaining to or connected with, characterized by, or of nature of revolution. Revolutionary, one who instigates or favors revolution, or one taking part therein. Right? So people have to realize how this thing is playing out, and realize that it's playing out in favor of the Moors, but the Moors are going to be the ones that have to do something with it. Nobody else could help us. It's either we help each other, or whatever we see going on right now continues. Right? And back then, Noble Ali said, if you don't want to get down with this, it's cool. Just go back to the corporate state and do whatever corporate people do. It's not an issue. It's not a problem. Nobody to hate because that's what you want to do. That's what it's there for. It's a slave plantation, and if you want to volunteer to be a slave on a plantation, then go right ahead. But people on a higher level are going to have to recognize that those people we have to go get, because we were supposed to get them. Right? Like the brothers were talking about with the gangbangers. Right? Like the brothers were talking about with the gangbangers. Okay? The Almighty Black Keystone Nation. The rise and fall and resurgence of an American gang. Okay? Page 133. As it is for many black men in prison in the United States, Fort's exposure to religion broadened while he served his federal sentence. In late 1974, Hairston and Fort were locked up together at a prison in Joliet, Illinois. They received visits from Christina Price Bay, the National Secretary of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Moorish Science Temple teachings were thick in prison, especially from the 1930s to the 1950s. Their draw is similar to the influence the NOI of Islam has over groups of black men in penitentiary today. Right? National MSTA leaders employed a targeted prison recruitment campaign to bolster their membership, and Hairston and Fort were no doubt a part of those efforts. During those prison visits, Price Bay extolled the teachings of MSTA founder Noble Ali. She even continued to visit Fort when officials transferred him to federal prison in Kansas to serve his sentence for defrauding the U.S. government. Right? Okay, so U.S. government, when U.S. is a corporation. Okay? Price Bay taught Jeff and the other Stones that black people in America are Asiatics and Moors. MSTA teachings claim that the ancestors of black people were the Canaanites who descended from Noah's son Ham. They are also descendants of the biblical Moabites. Their more recent ancestors inhabited West Africa, where they established the Moorish Empire. MSTA teachings claim that the ancestors of black people were Canaanites who descended from Noah's son Ham. They are also descendants of the biblical Moabites. Their more recent ancestors inhabited West Africa, where they established the Moorish Empire that ruled most of Europe and Asia. Okay, now this is by Natalie Y. Moore, M-O-O-R-E, and Lance Williams. Okay. The Library of Congress has cataloged the hardcover editions as follows. Moore Natalie Y., The Almighty Black Keystone Nation, The Rise and Fall and Resurgence of an American Gang. Includes bibliographical references and index. Titled, etc., etc., right? Cover design by Rochelle McLean. Interior design, John, printed in the US. Okay, right? So, it's clear that now this is a book about the Peaceful Nation, a gang. And in a book about a gang, they're talking about Noble Drew Ali and Moors taking the position of regents and going into those camps or whatever and establishing the teachings there, right? Which is called uplifting fallen humanity, which is what Moors is supposed to do, right? It's the obligation of Moors to go assist others for nothing, just because you have an obligation to do that. So they established the Moorish Empire that ruled most of Europe and Asia. According to Ali, the blacks of America are therefore actually Moors, and their natural religion is Islam, not Christianity. Ali taught that although Jesus was also a Canaanite, he was merely a prophet. The Romans killed him and then founded Christianity. Ali also preached to his followers that only by means of a deliberate distortion of the racial background of Jesus was it possible for white Europeans to claim him as one of their own and establish him as the head of their church. These ideals must have percolated in Fort's head as he served out his sentence. The founder of the MSTA had an intriguing life journey. Noble Drew Ali was born Timothy Drew in 1886 in North Carolina to ex-slaves living among the Cherokee. Right? Ex-slaves living among the Cherokee. Right? Legend has it that his mother foretold his greatness, predicting that he would do extraordinary things. However, when he was a boy, his mother died, and young Timothy went to live with his abusive aunt. He would tell a story of how, after running away, he joined a group of wandering gypsies, who we know as Moors are the Egyptians, the Mizraim, right? While with the gypsies, he heard a voice say to him, "If you go, I will follow." Okay? So remember, because people are gonna, oh yeah, he learned from the gypsies. Gypsies are Egyptians. What's Egyptians doing with Cherokees in North Carolina? What gypsies? Gypsies are Egyptians, right? And they're saying that this is how Noble Drew Ali got around the world with these gypsies who were traveling around the world. Because, you know, Egyptians had reed boats and stuff like that. It's not no secret that the first navigators were dark-skinned people that we call today Moors. There are multiple versions of the stories of Drew's travails. One account said when he was a teenager, he became a merchant seaman and traveled to Egypt. Right? Boats again, navigation, Moors. So this is parallel to individuals, right, who come into this information. And when you get this information, you realize that you already knew this. This is not something new to you. You've always been a Moor. You just never called yourself Moor. You called yourself black, Negro colored or whatever. But your frequency of how you lived your life in that mindset was Moorish. Right? So this is the same thing. Okay? That he's going around the world on a boat, and he's coming back to tell people that they're Moors, when the first navigators were Moors who were in a boat, and then his first trip was in a boat. Right? Okay? Traveled to Egypt, where he was supposedly initiated into a secret society that required him to go through a rite of passage. As part of the initiation, he spent some time inside the Great Pyramid of Cheops. Upon successful completion of the ritual, he received the name Noble Drew Ali. At some point, the Circle 7 Quran was revealed to Ali, and he said he became a prophet. In the early 1900s, Ali had a vision that instructed him to start a religion that would uplift people of African ancestry, or black Americans, out of their desolate conditions. He subscribed to the black nationalist teachings of Marcus Garvey. In response to his vision, Ali founded the Canaanite Temple in Newark, New Jersey. for fakers who want to give somebody else the credit, say Noble Drew Ali didn't do it. In 1925, the red fez wearing Ali moved to Chicago, declaring that black Americans weren't Negroes, coloreds, Ethiopians, or even black people. Members of the Moorish Science Temple of America always talk about the 1682 Black Laws of Virginia that exempted Moors from slavery, right? Exempted, right? Just like exempted from. Ali believed that Moors couldn't legally be slaves. His followers say that slave owner and U.S. President George Washington knew this, and he cut down the red banner of the Moors to hide the fact. This event, they say, is the origin of the legend of the young Washington not telling a lie about cutting down a cherry tree. This confusion over legalities led the Moors to forget their true identity and accept the label of Negro. As a result, they were made slaves. According to MSTA doctrine, if black people had honored their African ancestors and not converted to Christianity, they would not have been made slaves. Ali found the Moorish Science Temple from the Canaanite Temple and legally incorporated as a civic organization under the Illinois law. In 1928, Ali changed the name to the Moorish Science Temple of America and registered the organization as a religious institution. This is what they're saying, right? A religious institution. Simultaneously, Ali's movement, which he proclaimed a Mohammedan religion, gained footing in Detroit, New York, and Philadelphia. The primary objective of the teachings of the Moorish Science Temple of America was and is to connect African Americans with a proud heritage, thereby circumventing the stereotypical picture of Africa, its inhabitants, and their black American descendants as savage and uncivilized. Fort's intellectual and spiritual thirst attracted him to MSTA teachings, and he wanted to spread that knowledge within his built-in flock. But there was a marked difference in how the followers of MSTA proselytized the teachings of the organization and how the new El Ruckans embraced it. The El Ruckans lacked the same fervor. Although they embraced some of the symbolism of the MSTA, most didn't demonstrate the passion for the teachings that devoted MSTA followers did. Okay. Then we'll go to page 155. So remember, this is a book about gangs, and this is all the information that they have, that they found out just doing their research about Noble Drew Ali, right? Because that would have to be the first thing that triggers somebody to even look into this. Why are these guys following Noble Drew Ali? Why does this gang have a temple where they wear fezzes, right? Why do they have a divine constitution and bylaws? It's a gang, right? Same bylaws and the constitution that the Moors have, the gang had, right? And then you can see why they trumped up stuff on Jeff Fort, Chief Malik, right? You can see why they did it. You teaching more science to gangs, right? Him going through the same stuff, right? Having to deal with people's cases, because this is not a joke. This is very serious, right? Chapter 7, Angels of Death. The General Jones Armory on 52nd and Cottage Grove is a huge monstrosity on the south side of Chicago. From time to time, the side doors unlock and the public can sneak a peek at the military vehicles. But deep blackness swallows the camouflage trucks even during the day. On February 24th, 1985, the Armory opened its bulky doors and shone dim lights on the Chicago-based Nation of Islam for Savior's Day, the annual celebration marking the birth of NY founder W. Fard Muhammad. Inside the Armory was dark and dingy. A cold draft blew through the cavernous space. A sea of Savior's Day participants did their NY duty, wearing stony faces that created an orchestrated militaristic atmosphere, patting everyone down in security lines. Muslim women wore all white. Men in dark blue, Fruit of Islam uniforms took their military posture. Thousands of regular black folk walked in too, tolerating a frisk to hear Minister Louis Farrakhan deliver an impassioned speech entitled Power at Last, Forever. Another posturing group came to the Armory that Sunday afternoon, the El Ruckins. The Armory is just 10 blocks north of Woodlawn. Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam courted an alliance with the local El Ruckins. This alliance was not for the purpose of recruiting the El Ruckins to become registered NOI members. The NOI wanted the support of the El Ruckins as street warriors they could unleash on those who sought to do them harm. Farrakhan invited the El Ruckins to Savior's Day. At least 500 men showed up. They entered the Armory 2 by 2, standing at the 5-point stance while waiting to be searched. With red fezzes on their heads, the men looked more like a contingency of Moroccan dignitaries than gangbangers. Some generals sat on the stage, part of the ostentatious presentation that Farrakhan used at his headliner events. We'll just stop there, and you could go get Almighty Peace Donation, The Rise, Fall, and Resurgence of an American Gang, Natalie Y. Moore, Lance Williams, because it is real. Right? It is real. So the Moors have to let these people know that it's not about revolution, right? It's not about revolution, because if we look at things, if we look at things from a law perspective, right? Just like with the European and the newsprint speaking about chattel, and he really means cattle, right? Okay? Just because he said it, we can see that there's a parallel. Chattel, cattle, right? So when these people say that they're down for revolution, right, what we have to start putting out there, right, is that revolution is really insurrection, right? Because these people are not trying to overthrow a government. They're trying to overthrow a private corporation. So the term revolution is not even to be considered, because they're dealing with a private corporation. Okay? So these insurgents, right, that don't want to recognize that there's King Alfred plan in place exactly for this exact same region, because if you're an insurgent and not a revolutionary, right, then they could defend against insurgency, right? They can't defend against revolution, because the revolution is really nationality, which is the solution, right? There's no overthrowing any governments over here. We're the government. And if you're still here watching YouTube or whatever, you call yourself El or Bay, then ain't no government overthrown. We're it. Right? Go to morriscivilletter.net. Right? Because I think, some people take Brother Abdullah lightly and stuff like that, right? But go to morriscivilletter.net, right? And go to the information with regard to the Masonic titles that these individuals have and how they're mirroring the Moroccan Empire and the titles of the Moroccan Empire and all the dignitaries in the Moroccan Empire. That's the mirror for the Masonic Lodge titles, right? And then that'll lead you into, recognizing about all these treaties and all this stuff that was going on, that 80% of the treaties have a Bey or somebody connected to the Moroccan Empire, Ottoman Empire, Turkish Empire, connected to it. Anything to do with Britain, US, Portugal, whatever, right? Moors are involved. Okay? So these insurgents, and oh yeah, this is our Black's Law, 4th edition. Insurgent, one who participates in an insurrection, one who opposes the execution of law by force of arms, or who rises in revolt against the constituted authorities. Okay? So all these guys that are talking big about, they want to get, they want to revolt and take down the government and stuff like that. That's private corporation. Don't even get it twisted, because they will deal with your case. They got nukes, they got, audio warfare, visual warfare. You know what I mean? Like, they got every kind of warfare that you can think about. Biological warfare, right? So, and be mindful being around these people. If they don't want to change their tune, leave those people alone, huh? Because when it kicks off, don't talk about nationality didn't work when you're chilling with niggers, when you're chilling with insurgents, right? Because nationality is the order of the day for reason. Reason being that nobody else messes with Negro black colored people. You never notice nobody else messes with them. Everybody leaves them alone to do whatever they do. Just make sure you give me some fiat. And if we as Moors are consciously around these individuals, right, you better have your thinking cap on all the time if you're going to do that. Because, trust me, they're going to use insurgency. They're going to use insurrection. There's not going to be no race war thing. It's going to be insurrection. And the real revolution is nationality. The real revolution is proclaim your nationality. If you don't want to do it, then at least tell your youths about it. Tell a young person about it. So at least they can do something with it if you're too pumped to do something with it. Right? And that's not slight. That's just what it is. Okay? So as Moors in different jurisdictions, wherever you are, if you say that you are active Moor, right, and you study, and you don't guess about anything. If you know, then anywhere that you are, any place that you go within that jurisdiction where you are, right, is your nation state. That's your nation state. You're the government official, not the mirror, not the individuals who we see that have the buildings and whatever like that, and we think that because they have that, we have to have that to be government. We don't need that to be government. We just need to be government. Because it's us. There ain't nobody else that could stand up out here in North America. Because really that's all that's left. Because Bolivia, Venezuela, all those guys, they already nationalized everything. They already did what they're supposed to do. Right? But the North Gate is shared space. Right? Because the people looked at the Moorish Science Temple as, oh, forget that because whoever's in there, opposed to claiming everything. Just like, again, Brother Seth and Rabbe, active Moors, they go all over the place, right? They go to a temple, right? And they're speaking at the temple, and then they shut the meeting down because they're talking about stuff that the people shouldn't hear, and they shut the meeting down, like close down the meeting, just because you're revealing too much information, right? Those are your spots. That's your temple. That doesn't belong to any. That we put it out there, right? As Grand Sheik, we put it out there. This is your temple. This is not my stuff. And Islam to Adero Herbals for recognizing that the Moorish Science Temple is theirs, right? And running their herb business through the temple because they recognize their temple. And if they want to get a shelf and put some stuff up there, they could do that because that's their spot. And if you're somewhere where there's not a temple, every place that you go is the temple. If you got to use your house, but some Moors even do that to cut down expense. Use your place as the temple. You got a little box, square space that you're not using, or you could push some stuff aside or whatever, and you have a wall. There's the temple. And what do? Study Quran, study your you know what I mean? 101 questionnaire, Moorish literature, you know, anything else that you get that has to do with Moorish history, Moorish Empire, Moroccan Empire, Mohammedan, whatever. Because everything is our stuff. Okay? So we have to claim more ownership of what Noble Drew Ali left for us. Instead of waiting for people to put authority on something when back of the questionnaire says our authority. So you have it. Okay? So this is the perspective of what we are as Moors. Treaty of Peace and Friendship book. Right? You get this at rvbaypublications.com. Page 34. Moorish Regencies. A regency is a minor jurisdiction of an empire or kingdom, ruled by a bey or a governor, who is referred to as a regent. There were many Moorish regencies that did not want the oft-deceiving and theft-motivated Europeans to enjoy the empowering benefits generated by the continued sanction and use of the Moorish dominions. Many of the powerful Moorish regents were also not reluctant to make their thoughts and positions known. Right? So many of the powerful Moorish regents to show you that how vast the jurisdictions are. Right? A regency is a minor jurisdiction of an empire. So the minor jurisdiction of the empire is the nation state and whatever sub is under that as far as jurisdictions that are in control of by elves and beys of the Americas in the northern hemisphere. Okay. Based upon past negative experiences, the corrupt Inquisition practices, ongoing piracy issues, etc., solidified the opinions of many Moors, confirming why they did not trust the word of the encroaching European Christians. Logically, these pressing issues, not easily ignored, were also of vital and primal influence and consideration. However, long-term realities sometimes trump current reactions which guide the thoughts of the natural people in the affairs of nations. Thus, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was authorized by the Emperor to be concluded, and that the various social and political interchanges being noted within the treaty to be adopted into the wording and language. This impacting support and decision made by the Sultan of Morocco would be of particular progressive consequence for the European side of the negotiating parties. Keep in mind that the Moors were the superior political power at that time, although the Moroccan Empire was on decline. So although the Moroccan Empire was on a decline, right? Because also too, Moroccan Empire is a very broad jurisdiction, right? Extremely broad jurisdiction. So in doing research on the Moroccan Empire, right, know that automatically don't just have Africa in your mind, right? Don't just have Africa in your mind. Okay, and we'll go why soon. The highly influential nature, and when I say Africa, I mean here, not over there. Like, don't just think about where the Moors dwell, right? Don't just think about where we are. Understand that the Moroccan Empire is vast, right? It's beyond like just what Noble Drew Ali said, right? Because that was just a reference point, you know. The impacting support and decision made by the Sultan of Morocco would be of particular progressive consequence for the European side of the negotiating parties. Keep in mind that the Moors were the superior political power at the time, although the Moroccan Empire was on decline. The highly influential nature and character of the ministers' plenipotentiary positions held by these men had much to do with their latter capacities to hold the positions as presidents for the United States of North America, right? So the ministers plenipotentiary, again, you're going to go to morriscivilletter.net, right? And there's a couple of DVDs too. I can't remember the name of the particular one. But anything to do with, that you see having to do with Moors and Masonry on that site, check that. But do research in that area, right? Like, you know how Moors say, you know, go to RV Bay and stick to RV Bay for a year. Well, okay, well, we're giving you a branch, right? So, like, Brother Abdullah is just as credible as RV Bay in his own right with regard to etymology and, you know, I mean, Masonry, etc., right? So you can go there and use that just like you would use RV Bay and go to that website for a year and familiarize yourself with that sphere of Moorish history because of the vastness of the Moroccan Empire. Okay? So that when you hear, you know, like when you hear Masons and politicians and see them doing, you know, speeches and these things, right? That they're acting out what Moors are supposed to be doing. They're not acting. They have a agenda, but their foundation is pretending to be the Moroccan Empire dignitaries, regents, etc. Because we weren't being that. So now that we're being that, we have to start putting them on notice. We have to start, you know, letting them know. And again, the Moors exercising is something vast. It's not one way to do something. If you study, you'll find out stuff that you start doing your own classes, putting out your own books, right? Because it's so vast, right? These facts cannot be overlooked nor underestimated. Furthermore, do not let the contemporary teachers, scholars, and historians of the present day corporate United States feign a lack of knowledge of this true history. Such heavily instituted diversions and denials, clothed with deception and pretext, exist and is practiced for the political purpose of maintaining the artificially constructed mental servitude among the defeated and overthrown Moors. Know for a surety, however, that these deceitful aspects of interchange have been and are consciously applied social engineering tools, with the same being used for economic and social conquest. These and other political dictums and trickery were cribbed for domination, for control, and for birthright theft. Many naive or unconscious Moors would often argue by ignorance, by blind faith, or by miseducation that they are Negroes, blacks or colored folks, Indians or West Indians, etc. Right? So remember we were speaking about nationality is really where it's at. Right? That's really the revolution. Declaring your nationality. Right? And coming back into the constitutional fold. And when in the constitutional fold, study so you can have the mentality of a constitutionalist and then exercise based on your knowledge. Right? Don't exercise beyond your means of what you have here. You could only exercise what's here. Right? Paul Kingsnorth wrote an article and only went to research this because Brother Omar Bey put me onto, you know, just doing some research on Monsanto's, right? Monsanto. Because a few years ago or last year or something like that, in Hungary, they burned all these like 500 hectares of Monsanto fields or whatever like that, right? So, you know, again, you put on the thinking cap, you realize that Hungary nationalized the fields. Because the real revolution isn't that they burnt down the crops that Monsanto was growing on their land with their genetically modified seeds. The revolution was that they nationalized the land, which gave them jurisdiction over the crops so they could burn them. Right? So we're just going to go to this article by Paul Kingsnorth, right? With separate people now that recognize this fraud of Monsanto. And then I pick it in and all that stuff. Nationalize, right? Nationalize the land, because remember where they are, they're national already. They're not like over here where we don't know what nationality and birthrights is. Where they're at, they know about nationality and birthrights. And they know that as soon as foreign government starts playing the ass or whatever, nationalize and burn down all their stuff. And then we'll just rebuild after. Right? Because the real revolution isn't the throwing rocks and tear gas and guns and all that. The real revolution is nationalized. And then after you nationalize, then you can do what you want because you're in your jurisdiction. And these people are encroaching. And they're not encroaching on a corporate paper that they signed. They're encroaching on land now. And we have a right to defend that. Right? We send today a very clear message to all those who have invested in Monsanto in India and abroad. Take your money out now before we reduce it to ashes. Karnataka State Farmers Association, India. So this is the Farmers Association in India. One of the most morally dubious claims made in Monsanto's recent newspaper advertising blitz was the assertion that the widespread use of food biotechnology is the only way to feed the world's poor. The corporation's argument went like this. Millions of people currently go hungry in developing countries. In the future, as global population increases, this problem is set to worsen. Only high-yield agriculture can possibly produce enough food to meet this increased demand. And therefore, quite obviously, only biotechnology can feed the world, right? This is their mentality. You know, if you go do your research on Rick Smith, you know, if you're not scared of Europeans telling you the truth or whatever, right? You can go to Rick Smith, and then Rick Smith will tell you about the deal that these Europeans made with the gray aliens in order to have all this bio whatever that they claim that they got, right? That they didn't get from the Egyptians and all that because, you know, certain stuff we didn't teach them. We didn't go that far with them, right? We know that we only gave them 33 degrees, and you're not making bio nothing with no 33 degrees of knowledge, right? So just go check Rick Smith, Peter Moon as well, right? And they'll put you onto some info. Monsanto's strategy was to try to portray its genetically modified crops as the solution to the hunger and poverty problems of the third world. The company even tried to round up a group of respected voices from developing countries to endorse blah, 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 right? At 1:30 in the afternoon on the 28th of November, 1998, right? So this is how long they're nationalized and they're kicking these people out. 98. In Sindanur, in Indian state of Karnataka, the leader of the Karnataka State Farmers Association, a movement which claims a membership of 10 million, arrived at one of India's first Monsanto test sites. The owner of the field, Basana Hansol, came out to greet him. With the help of Basana's neighbors, a number of KRS members, other local grassroots organizations representing untouchables and landless farmers, they proceeded to tear up every one of the genetically modified cotton plants growing there. They stacked them in a heap in the middle of the field and set them on fire. In minutes, Monsanto's test crops were reduced to ashes. This was the first strike in a grassroots campaign that is spreading rapidly across India, right? So if this was our stuff, right, they would have already said, you know, African American, ex-slaves. They would have called us all these other things. But in this, they're strictly referring to the people by their national descent, that they're Indians, right? And Professor Nanju Daswamy, a committed Gandhian and leader of the KRSS, issued a statement to the press as the field burned. We denounce the ignorance, incompetence and irresponsibility of the Union government to gamble with the future of Indian agriculture, said the professor. He went on to demand that all the tests of genetically modified crops in India be stopped, that the country's Patent Act be amended to stop the patenting of basic crop varieties, and that Monsanto be banned from the country. Otherwise, he said, Indian farmers would continue to take the situation into their own hands. So the Indian farmers, right, are taking control of their nation state. Because Monsanto's a foreigner. What are you doing here growing genetically modified stuff in our land? Our land's national. This is a particular jurisdiction, right? But it goes into the article how they were able to even get in that far, to have all these acres of whatever, right? It goes into it in the article. So the article, again, is by Paul Kingsnorth, Kingsnorth, India cheers while Monsanto burns. Good article. Right? So the Moors are everywhere. Now, this one, right? Malaysia, tour guide book or something like that. 1987. 1987. Page 198. The Babas, or Straits Chinese, are descendants of the Chinese pioneers who accepted the practical realities around them, about whose ideas of social relationships and religious aspirations are still derived from the traditions of their forefathers in the villages of Fukin, F-U-K-I-E-N. The women folk may have worshipped at a Malay Karamat shrine once in a while, but that is not so much an indication of their respect for the Muslim religion as an expression of the Chinese desire to keep on the right side of all spirits of whatever origin. The Malays, M-A-L-A-Y-S, for their part, seem to have been equally unaffected by the Chinese outlook in social and spiritual matters. It was also through Malacca, M-A-L-A-C-C-A, that the Islamic faith came to Malaysia. All Malays have been Muslims since the later part of the 15th century, when rich Moorish merchants from Pasai and Sumatra settled in Malacca. From here, Islam spread by conversion throughout the peninsula and its neighboring islands. Right? So from here, Islam spread by conversion. From here, Islam spread by conversion. What did Noble Jawli tell the Moors? Go back to their divine creed. Where are they converting from? They're converting from these Christian Inquisitionist people that force them to throw their gods away and adopt some idols. And what do they find out that their true religion is? Islam. In Malaysia. Right? In Malaysia. And they know what's up in Malaysia. They don't have to hide. Right? They know what's up in Malaysia. Okay? This is a Malaysian tour book. Okay? Right? These are Malaysians right here. That's what Malaysians look like. Malaysians look like that. Right? Malaysians look like this. You know that's some sister that you know in Malaysia. Right? We're not done with Malaysia yet. Because it's imperative, even though we already know that we really recognize how people adopt and, right, turban right there, right, adopt and exercise their Moorish birthright, because it's theirs. It's not something that they're picking up because, you know, they were subjugated and are confused because they were under subjugation. No, when you're under occupation, you go back to the ancient foremothers and forefathers' divine principles to get out of it. And that's nationalization. Right? That's all it is. Everybody doing it. Because they know, right? All the kickboxer people and all that, right? Who like watching these guys, you know, they're right, feathers up. Okay? Malaysia, right? Tatted up and all that. So don't be shy with your tats. People who have tats, you know, try to tell you European barbaric stuff and all that. Crazy. All our stuff, right? Yeah. Right. How many more do you see with their turban cloth wrapped around their fez like this? I know you've seen it. Can't say you never seen it, right? Some Malaysians, look, our people, somewhere else, exercising Moorish culture. You don't have to have some insurrection to be free. All we have to do is go back to the principles of our ancient foremothers and forefathers, our national principles, our divine creed. And whoever doesn't want it, that's cool. Just go back to the corporate state, stay in your lane. Right? Mark Taliano, lost opportunities. Why won't Canada nationalize its natural resources? Remember, this is May 4th, 2013, right? The fact that Canada is on the cusp of ratifying a corporate empowerment treaty with China, the Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Act, adds urgency to a discussion that will likely never take place on Parliament Hill. The nexus of concentrated media ownership plus our neoconservative government, their neoconservative government, means that the accepted political economic agenda in Canada is necessarily insular and often self-defeating. To make matters worse, the corporate government's increasing control over the CBC means that the public and political narrative is becoming even more restricted. Anything that threatens the dysfunctional marriage between subsidized monopoly capitalism and government is increasingly off the table. Consequently, the government is willfully blind to two elephants in the room. The first is man-made global warming, and the second is resource mismanagement. Both issues are intricately linked, and if the resource management economic model were improved, we would have better chance of addressing the overarching issue of catastrophic man-made global warming. A half step toward a better option would be to follow former Premier Peter Lougheed's advice. Basically, his ignored advice was to act like a resource owner, develop one project at a time, develop a substantial sovereignty heritage fund, charge higher royalties, and take care of externalities. Unfortunately, the externalities part of the equation is even more pressing now than it was during Lougheed's time as Premier of Alberta. So the next step, which is increasingly off the agenda, would be to start nationalizing our resources. Nationalizing at least some of our resources will make sense both economically and environmentally. If we were to nationalize some tar sands projects, we would retain our judicial and legislative sovereignty over the resources instead of relinquishing it to China Incorporated. And we would develop the resources by adding value here instead of shipping it crude overseas. Developing the resource in this country would enable us to better respect the environment and create thousands of good jobs as well. Canada can't reclaim anything as far as nationalizing any resources, right? Because of the insurrection of the Indians that won't let them do that, right? And really they're stuck because they're a private corporation and they have nothing to do with government, and only governments could do the process of nationalizing. They can naturalize some stuff if they want, corporation, right? But they can't mess with the national stuff. Right? Proof and point of who has jurisdiction and who can't or whatever, right? If Moors are the heirs to this estate, and Moors can go to courts, beat them up, put down the car, get taxes off, get kicked out prison after they get detained for 2 days or a week or whatever like that, right? Obviously there's something to this. Obviously this works in some type of capacity. It's not on a broader capacity because not enough people are doing things. And then the people who are doing things, they don't get the support that they need from all the other nationals who have information that could add on to this spearhead that we're making to kill this beast with nationality, right? Because the proof is in the exercising. That's why we show the receipts all the time. Show people, right? What is these people talking foolishness about it doesn't work or whatever like that? We show you our receipts. There's Moors that I talk to, that they go to court and their stuff gets dismissed. No questions asked, no nothing. Right? But these things have to be put out in the public forum for the people to see that, oh wow, they actually, and you know, just like how they got, you know, all this stuff against the Moors. There should be just as much showing Moors being active. With whatever it is. Newsletter, newspaper, website, you know, not just putting out whatever, because, you know, you have Moors that, you know, Noble Drew Ali and whatever, like, but then they have, you know, fat ass girl pictures on Facebook and stuff like that. They're liking fat asses and stuff like that, right? So it's like, you know, some Moors aren't going to take the position of being active, really, but the ones that have taken the steps and dealt with certain things in the manner that it was supposed to be dealt with, and you have everything going on right here, right, that you don't need to get help to write a writ. You write your writ, send it to somebody, let them look over it, maybe send it to 5 people, let all look over it, and some of them, you know, give some advice, say put this in, take this out, or whatever like that, and then you put that out in the atmosphere, and let Allah take care of it, because, you know what I mean, like, there's no options anymore. We're all out of options. The only option is nationalize. And when you nationalize, then you're going to have to be active with this, because that's why you nationalized in the first place. Whether we want to take the activity and do something, or whether we don't, it's still going to be there. People are still going to be using it. and doing whatever they got to do with it until we decide to do what we're supposed to do with ours, right? Um, to nationalize or not to nationalize. In early May, Bolivian president issued a decree that declared unbroken state control over his country's natural gas resources. The move solidified President Morales' position alongside Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro as Latin America's new socialist-inclined leaders, uniting against what they view as the capitalist influence of U.S. and other foreign investors. Not surprisingly, the international law firms with interest in Bolivia's natural gas expressed sharp indignation toward the new law. Right? So that's what they always do. As soon as more is exercised, go back to when Grand Chief Nature, El Bey, and Taj Tariq Bey were fighting the city of New Jersey, right? And they took a position of suing them, right? Because, you know, they were sued fraudulently. People's stuff getting taken or whatever like that. So they decided, okay, we're going to sue them, right? And when they sued, the court, the city said that the suit is, you know, inadmissible or whatever because of diversity, right? Now, when they're saying that it's diversity, right? They're saying that it's diversity because the claims are based on citizenship, right? So they're gonna not let you nationalize and claim something, right? But their defense, if you go at them, is that you're diverse to them, so you can't come at them, is what their position is going to be. And the only position that they could take, because they're really the foreigner here, right? And they know that they could stand on Treaty of Peace and Friendship because, you know, it also says that if a Moor should do something to a European, that there are certain jurisdictions that have to hear that, right? So diversity of citizenship, a phrase used with reference to the jurisdiction of the federal courts, which under U.S. Constitution, Article 3, Section 2, extends to cases between citizens of different states, designating the condition existing when the party on one side of a lawsuit is a citizen of one state and the party on the other side is a citizen of another state. When this is the basis of jurisdiction, all the persons on one side of the controversy must be citizens of different states from all the persons on the other side. Okay? So, like we learned from Brother Fonteas, that, you know, forget suits, because this is their argument, right? And because they're colored, of course, you know, judge is gonna side with his boy, right? Don't be fooled that, you know, Grand Chief Nature Bay and Tashriq Bay, they lost the case. They didn't lose the case because of the acceptance of the diversity claim of the plaintiff, of the defendant, right? They recognize that to go further with it, to speak about anything whatsoever, right? They lose because it's the plaintiff that has the superior claim. Like we're reading in the Friendship and Treaty book, right? The Moors have the superior authority here. So when the Moors exercise, or when the Moors say, right, stuff is going to happen, which comes back to the activity. And looking at Bolivia, wanting to nationalize mines, right? It's a pattern that has been going on, right? And when we think about it, everywhere else, they're able to nationalize their resources because the people are nationals already. So there's not an argument about are they black Bolivians, brown Bolivians, or whatever. They're Bolivian. That's their nationality, so now they can take matters into their hands because it's their land that they're exercising in. Right? It's their land that they're exercising in. As nationals, not as fictions. Right? And showing that to show Moors that Moors are active out there. Right? Moors are active. If you proclaim your nationality and put people on notice about your claim of being a national and not being Negro, black, colored, that's activity. You get applause, like standing ovation, right? Because that's what the point is, to get yourself out of the dead state. But now that you're in full life, right, it is important for us to exercise on higher levels, right? It is important for us to exercise on higher levels because we are neither actually dead or civiliter mortus. In full life, continuing in both physical and civil existence. Continuing in both physical and civil existence. Right? Continuing. That is neither actually dead, so neither actually dead, as in the grave, or civiliter mortus, dead in the eyes of the law. So we're not dead in any of those ways. So we have to exercise our authority then. Because if we're in full life, in full, relating to the whole or full amount, as a receipt in full, complete, giving all details, what's your paperwork was? Your paperwork was in full. Right? Your paperwork was in full because you're in full life. And your paperwork had the details that you went and put these people on notice about their position and your position. Right? You don't have to go shut a court down, like we were saying. You don't have to go shut down some government building by, using your birthright. And all it is, tell somebody who doesn't know. That's how we beat these people. Yeah, your writs have to be sent out, and you have to, be doing something with regard to this information, right? But the real deal is telling somebody who doesn't know. Because if we don't, and we get in some type of adversity, if we get in some type of conflict with the opposing force that's been stealing our birthright, right? They're going to go to some Negro, black, colored guy that they know is going to pay them 5 G's and go get them to deal with us. Have them fund this stuff against us. Right? So we don't need to be in adversity with them. We just need to start making claims. right? It's okay if you don't want to be on camera, right? There, you just look online. There's a way, and I'm sure you could even talk to Brother Casanova, right? Or any other of these techie Moors out there, right? And they'll show you a way how to not let your camera show you or whatever, and just your audio, just your voice, right? And if you got names of people, put them out there, put it in the public, because you're more, right? Noble Ali, don't forget, Noble Ali told you to do that. You know what I mean? He said that more, you got to be the ones to, you know what I mean, put this information out. But if you don't put it out, don't expect anybody else to put it out. You know what I mean? Speaking about anybody else to put it out, Islam to Brother Cosmo L, again out in Cali, because that more had me searching for a bookstore. And I didn't find a bookstore, but I found a little library where they were selling, they had a little cart, you know, and they were selling books for 25 cents. You know, so a lot of the books that we've been reading, except the Treaty of Peace and Friendship and the Keystone Nation, are these 25-cent books, right? Niccolo Machiavelli, Machiavelli, 1469 to 1527. He was trained mainly in the notarial and secretarial skills, which served to qualify him for the minor positions that he occupied within the Republican government of Florence between 1498 and 1512, the year of his imprisonment, alleged torture, and eventual exile. During this period of public service, he was often called upon to participate in diplomatic missions to foreign as well as Italian courts, and his reports to the Florentine Signoria are mines of information on the regions in which he traveled, the people he observed, and the problems that it fell to him to analyze and interpret. The selection which follows is taken from the Prince and represents only a brief portion of that short treaty. The Prince cannot be properly understood without reference to Machiavelli's desire to please the Medici and return to active political life, his belief that Italy was in need of a strong man, and his extreme patriotic fervor. Thus, his concern is to instruct the man on horseback on how to gain and maintain power, so as to restore Italy to the grandeur that he, as a good humanist historian, saw in its past. So from the Prince, chapter 15, of the things of which men, and especially princes, are praised or blamed. It now remains to be seen, what are the methods and rules for which a prince, as regards to his subjects and friends. And as I know that many have written of this, I fear that my writing about it may be deemed presumptuous, differing as I do, especially in this matter, from the opinions of others. But my intention being to write something of use to those who understand, it appears to me more proper to go to the real truth of the matter than to its imagination. And many have imagined republics and principalities, which have never been seen or known to exist in reality. For how we live is so far removed from how we ought to live, that he who abandons what is done for what ought to be done will rather learn to bring about his own ruin than his preservation. A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. Therefore, it is necessary for a prince who wishes to maintain himself to learn not to be good and to use his knowledge and not use it, according to the necessity of the case. Leaving on one side, then, those things which concern only an imaginary prince, and speaking of those that are real, I state that all men, and especially princes, who are placed at a greater height, are reputed for certain qualities which bring them either praise or blame. Thus one is considered liberal, another misero, or miserly, using a Tuscan term, one a free giver, another rapacious, one cruel, another merciful, one a breaker of his sword, another trustworthy, one effeminate and pusillanimous, another fierce and high-spirited, one humane, another haughty, one lascivious, another chaste, one frank, another astute, one hard, another easy, one serious, another frivolous, one religious, another an unbeliever, and so on. I know that everyone will admit that it would be highly praiseworthy in a prince to possess all the above-named qualities that are reputed good, but as they cannot all be possessed or observed, human conditions not permitting of it, it is necessary that he should be prudent enough to avoid the scandal of those vices which would lose him the state, and guard himself, if possible, against those which will not lose it him. But if not able to, he can indulge them with less scruple. And yet he must not mind incurring the scandal of those vices, without which it would be difficult to save the state. For if one considers well, it will be found that some things which seem virtuous would, if followed, lead to one's ruin, and some other things which appear vices result in one's greater scrutiny and well-being. Right? And this is Italian Renaissance, 25th century. Right? By Werner L. Gundersheimer. You already know. You already know Mr. Gundersheimer. So, in other words, pick your battles. Right? This is your birthright. This is your birthright. And yeah, Medici family are Moors. That's why we just put that out there. Just because. Right? So it's your birthright. It's for you to exercise Allah's will, because you are a lion man. Right? Because you are a lion man, then we should let the spirit guide. The spirit will tell you what to do. Like it's so good to know, right? So good to know that we have this ability, right? We have this superpower, right? To be able to manifest our will, because we got a nationality, so we don't have the block, because we don't call ourselves anything. We call ourselves our ancient foremothers and forefathers. So gateway is open for Moors, right? And there's Moors out there. I tell you, there's Moors out there who they put their Moorish will to stuff and manifest stuff on the earth plane. Manifesting, right? That's the power of nationality. You think these Bolivians are nationalizing resources just to have resources? No, they're invoking their ancient foremothers and forefathers, right? They're living tribal religions, going back to the state of mind of your ancient foremothers and forefathers. Throwing away all that stuff that was given to us and reclaiming everything else. Things that we thought wasn't our stuff, right? So living tribal religions, H.W. Turner. Totemic spirits. There is one other misunderstanding that needs to be removed. The idea that tribal people are often animal worshippers. This may arise from the fact that a particular tribe may believe it has a special spiritual relationship with a certain animal species, or less often, a plant, an object, a place, or even an insect, like the witchetty grub, which forms part of the food of some Australian Aborigines. This is then the totem of the tribe, and is treated with great respect. For a powerful spirit guardian lives in this animal and acts through it for tribal welfare. It may never be killed except in circumstances, and then it can be eaten only with due ritual and sparingly as part of a sacred meal, with the spiritual purpose of uniting the men and the divinities. The totem species will often give the tribe its name, such as bear and wolf clans of the Ojibwe of Ontario. It serves to establish the tribal identity and explain its history, for the totem appears in midst of the tribal origins. It also maintains a strong link, a kind of mystical spiritual kinship between men, the world of the spiritual powers, and the world of nature. And this is a profound idea, very different from the notion of stupid men worshiping animals as such. It is quite false to think of North American Indians worshiping their totem poles. These may have the animal at the top and the generations of ancestors beneath. So they are more like our heraldic shields of ancestors beneath. So they are more like our heraldic shields, which also include animals and establish the identity of a family by a symbolic summary of its history, or the emblems of a patron saint we may have chosen as a guardian spirit. Totemic affiliations with animals are common in North America, where the word comes from, but totemistic is not characteristic of all tribal societies, and sometimes it is more a piece of social history or the basis of a pattern of social relationships than an important religious practice. So, and throughout it, it just show like different shrines. We have a Nigerian shrine. So if you want, you know what I mean, you have a corner in your house that you're not using, you build a shrine for the ancestors, right? What's kind of hype about this too, they had, since I'm a son of Olokun, they had Olokun up in here, right? There's a Shango right there, busting them in bed. Mori god. It's the Mori god. It's right there. Mori god. You go research them just because. All right. this book. This is I don't know if these are even out there anymore or whatever, but they were interesting, so I picked them up. We got 846. 2 more books right here. Problems in American History. Okay. Copyright 1952. Library of Congress. Catalog number 6619879. And chapter 55, or page 55. White supremacy. Since the introduction of Negro slaves into the 17th century colonies, quote-unquote white Americans had assumed that deficiencies inherent in the race itself accounted for the apparent cultural inferiority of Negroes. In response to the abolitionist attack during the antebellum period, Southerners had rationalized slavery in terms of an elaborate exposition of this inferiority. After emancipation, when racial tensions became acute, advocates of white supremacy again developed a racist theory based on evidence drawn from history, individual psychology, and group characteristics. The assumption that the history of a racial group displays its natural capabilities was taken for granted, so that it was necessary only to remind the reader of the cultural poverty of Negro history in order to prove the case. A selection from a book published in 1908 by one of the more modern Southern segregationists, Alfred H. Stone, illustrates this kind of reasoning. We have long been guilty of the folly of trying to legislate the Negro into a white man, and a pyramid of failures has apparently not yet convinced us of the futility of the undertaking. We have ignored the scientific truth of the ethnic differences among the human family, and have blindly disregarded the fact that the Negro, in common with all other races, possesses certain persistent distinguished characteristics, foolishly attempting to evade the stubborn fact that the Negro in Africa is today just what we know him to have been since he first appeared on that continent. We have sought in slavery an excuse for the natural and inevitable resemblance between the native and transplanted branches of the family, and have proceeded toward the American Negro as though heredity could have overridden by constitution and laws. When free from white or mulatto influence, the Negro masses are of a content, happy disposition. They are docile, tractable, and unambitious, with but few wants and those easily satisfied. They incline to idleness, and though having a tendency to the commission of petty crimes, are not malicious and rarely cherish hatred. They care nothing for the sacred right of suffrage, and when left to their own inclinations, will disfranchise themselves by the thousand, rather than pay an annual poll tax. They indefinitely prefer the freedom of privileges of a car of their own to the restraint of one in which they would be compelled to mingle with white people. Surrounded by larger possibilities for material betterment that have ever been possessed by any land-tilling people in the world, in the peaceful enjoyment of church and lodge, they fret not themselves because of evildoers, nor trouble about participation in politics, nor suffer dreams of social equality to mar the peaceful tenure of a carefree mind. Negro accommodation. Although some Negroes, especially in the North, continue to protest vehemently against the enforced subordination of their race in the late 19th century, the overwhelming majority passively accepted the leadership of Booker T. Washington, an advocate of industrial rather than the higher education for Negroes. The selection below is taken from Washington's address at the Atlanta Exposition in 1891, which helped enormously to win him the support of Southern white political leaders and Northern philanthropists. Our greatest danger is that in the great leap from slavery to freedom, we may overlook the fact that the masses of us are to live by the productions of our hands, and fail to keep in mind that we shall prosper in proportion as we learn to dignify and glorify common labor and put brains and skill into common occupations of life, shall prosper in proportion as we learn to draw the line between the superficial and the substantial, the ornamental gewgaws of life and the useful. No race can prosper till it learns that there is much dignity in tilling a field as in writing a poem. It is at the bottom of life we must begin, and not at the top. Nor should we permit our grievances to overshadow our opportunities. To those of the white race who look to the incoming of those of foreign birth and strange tongues and habits for the prosperity of the South, were I permitted, I would repeat what I say to my own race. Cast down your bucket where you are. Cast it down among the 8 million Negroes whose habits you know, whose fidelity and love you have tested in days when to have proven treacherous meant the ruin of your firesides. Cast down your bucket among these people who have without strikes and labor, wars, tilled your fields, cleared your forests, built your railroads and cities, brought forth treasures from the bowels of the earth, and helped make possible this magnificent representation of the progress of the South. Cast down your bucket among my people, helping and encouraging them as you are doing on these grounds, and with education of head, hand, and heart, you will find that they will buy your surplus land, make blossom to the waste places in your fields, and run your factories. While doing this, you can be sure in the future, as in the past, that you and your families will be surrounded by the most patient, faithful, abiding, and unresentful people that the world has seen, as we have proved our loyalty to you in the past in nursing your children, watching by the sickbed of your mothers and fathers, and often follow them with tear-dimmed eyes to their graves. So in the future, in our humble way, we shall stand by you with a devotion that no foreigner can approach, ready to lay down our lives if need be in defense of yours, interlacing our industrial, commercial, civil, and religious life with yours in a way that shall make the interests of both races one. In all things that are purely social, we can be as separate as fingers, yet one has a hand in all things essential to mutual progress. The wisest among my race understand that the agitation of questions of social equality is the extremest folly, and that progress in the enjoyment of all the privileges that will come to us must be the result of severe, constant struggle rather than of artificial forcing. No race that has anything to contribute to markets of the world is long, in any decree, ostracized. It is important and right that all privileges of the laws be ours, but it is vastly more important that we be prepared for the exercise of those privileges. The opportunity to earn $1 in a factory just now is worth infinitely more than the opportunity to spend $1 in an opera house. That was Booker T. Washington in Problems in American Holocaust, 3rd edition. Right? And of course, we gotta give profit his little bit, you know, because we would know about this nationality and birthrights if it wasn't for Noble Drew Ali. So we go to Holy Instruction from the Prophet, the social duties. When thou considerest thy wants, when thou beholdest thy imperfections, acknowledge his goodness, O son of humanity, who honored thee with humanity, endowed thee with speech, and placed thee in society to receive and confer reciprocal helps and mutual obligations, protection from injuries, thy enjoyments of the comforts and the pleasures of life. All these thou owest to the assistance of others, and couldst not enjoy but in the bands of society. It is thy duty, therefore, to be a friend to mankind, as it is thy interest that man should be friendly to thee. As the rose breatheth sweetness from its own nature, so the heart of a benevolent man produceth good works. He enjoyeth the ease and tranquillity of his own breast, and rejoiceth in the happiness and prosperity of his neighbor. He openeth not his ear unto slander. The faults and failings of men give a pain to his heart. His desire is to do good, and he researcheth out the occasions thereof in removing the oppression of another. He relieveth himself. From the largeness of his mind, he comprehendeth in his wishes the happiness of all men, and from the generosity of his heart, he endeavoreth to promote it. Holy instruction from the Prophet, the social duties, that you're not going to find in the Aquarian Gospel if you know any haters that like to say Noble Drew Ali is a plagiarist or whatever. So, once again, Moors, Islam, peace, love, Hotep. Keep in mind, oh yeah, got something for y'all. Gotta put it out there. You know, nobody put it out there yet. You should go to RV Bay Publications and pick up Brother Seth and Rabe's new book, Life Resolutions, right? Should be available on RV Bay. If it's not there, you can go to Seth and Rabe, it's right there, on Facebook, and you can get the book through him, right? So, life resolutions today, dealt with life resolutions. Of course, Holy Quran, the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Moorish Science Temple of America. Problems in American History. These are the 25-cent books right here. Living Tribal Religions. Yeah, there's a guy right there that they're going to say is black, but if we ask him what he is, he's not going to say he's black. He's going to say he's from some landmass, right? Italian Renaissance. See what they're playing with. Moment, touched by God and all that. Oh, that's the Moors. Treaty of Peace and Friendship book, rvbaypublications.com. The Malaysia book. This one right here, this one is huge, colossal. So if you get this one, search anything, get this one. They go pretty hard in this. Go real hard. It's a good read. And also, don't forget to go check out Brother Sabir. You know, the brother's doing his traveling. You know what I mean? All over the place. So he's got information out there. Right? And to the Moors, Islam, Peace Hotep. Islam to all the Moors that were online. We had about 16 to 14 back and forth that were logged in. Moors on the chat, Islam. All the Moors worldwide. Keep in mind, Moorish Heritage and History School, eyes wide open on Blog Talk at 9:30. And don't forget Sons of Allah coming up in June, end of June, I think it's 19th, third Thursday, right? And don't forget, check out Khalifa Media, right? Make sure you get the book. Well, they got a few books right now. So just go check Khalifa Media and you'll see all the books they got, right? But, you know, the kicker is Moors in America, right? So make sure you go get that for sure. Because Moors in America is like, you need to get that book. If you're new Moor, whatever, just like we're saying, this is just another branch that we're telling you to go to, right? Because we know that you're going to get what you're supposed to get if you go there, right? Right? Don't go there and then go straight over into something and say that we led you astray. Like, we send you somewhere specific, go there, stay there, right? Don't move. Because these dirty Moors are starting to try to injure people. Innocent people, too. So Islam Moors, we'll close out with the prayer. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through His holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Islam. Islam, Moors. Peace. See y'all or hear y'all at 9:30. Islam.